Hi y'all, it's your lucky day. Guess what I'm making? Guessed it, Boova Shenkel. So let me go through the ingredients list with you. You're going to need a half a teaspoon of baking powder, not baking soda, a half a teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of softened butter that's been softened at room temperature. You're going to need some ice water. You're going to be using approximately half a cup and 1 beaten egg and 2 cups of all-purpose flour. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the dry ingredients, which is the salt and the baking powder. And then I'm going to give it a good mix here with my dough cutter. Okay, just mix, mix, mix till it's well mixed. And then I'm going to add the room temperature butter, and I'm going to cut the butter into the dough until I have fine granules, kind of like pea-sized granules. So I'm not going to do all of this on camera. I'm just going to do enough to show you that I'm going to be cutting the butter into the flour until it's evenly distributed. Now it's time to add the egg, and I'm just going to stir this up and get it as evenly mixed as possible. Okay, now it's time to start adding just a little bit of ice water at a time. And that's exactly how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to keep adding water until I have a ball of dough. Alrighty then, I hope you like to make dough, because that's what we're doing now. We have our little dough ball all made up. I had a larger one and I cut it in half. Okay, and so I already used my empanada press, okay, to cut these, and I just used the back of the press. This calls for 6-inch circles, but my empanada maker or press is only about 4.5, so that's what I'm using. If you're gonna do 6-inch circles, you're gonna have to really make a much larger dough recipe, probably times 6 on this. Okay, this is just a small batch. This is just it's just for me and my husband, so I'm not making a great deal of these. And I'm rolling this out to 1/8 inch. Okay, and don't worry if your ball of dough is kind of sticky or whatnot. That's okay, because you're going to be flouring your surface, and that adds flour to your dough, and then it's, of course, it's just not sticky anymore. So out of that first ball of dough, I got 5 circles that are about 4.5 inches in diameter. Okay, so these are going to be smaller pierogies, but the classic diameter for this is 6 inches. Okay, so I'm just going to roll this out. I'm going to see if I can get 5 circles out of this one. We shall see. So I just take the back of my empanada maker, all right, and I just do like this. Okay, and I'm just going to set that little doodad aside. Looks like I'm going to get about 4 out of this one. Maybe this dough ball was just a little bit smaller than the first one, because I got 5 out of the first one. So it looks like I'm going to have about 9 out of this batch with the 4.5 inch empanada maker. You can also cut these by hand. If you don't have an empanada maker, you can use a bowl or something, or even a knife. You can just cut freehand around a pattern, like a piece of paper that you just cut a circle out of. You can do it that way. And like this one, it wants to be a little shy, but as far as diameter, like I don't have enough dough, so I'm just going to press it out just a little bit, because this is a nice stretchy dough because of the egg. And so there we have it. We have 9, and I'll just set that aside, maybe do something else with that later. Okay, now I'm going to go over with you what you're going to need for the potato filling. You're going to need about 4 medium to large potatoes, peeled, chunked. Boil them until they're soft enough to mash. You're going to need 2 beaten eggs. You're going to need 1 piece of toast that has been toasted on both sides and cut into small cubes. Okay, so you kind of have to let the toast cool down so that you can cut it. And I would use a bread knife, okay? And I like to dice them really small, okay? And like I said, if you're going to be feeding like a family of 4, I would multiply this recipe by about 6, okay? Because you want to have leftovers and stuff. You're going to need a cup of onion, 1/3 cup of celery, a half a teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. So now I'm going to get to mashing these potatoes. So egg gets added to this, right? But first, I want to cool my potatoes. I just mash them with an old school potato masher, okay? This is my favorite thing. Lumps are okay. You don't worry about having smooth mashed potatoes on this, okay? Lumps are okay. All right, so I have this bowl of ice, and I'm just going to set this pot right in it like that, okay, to cool my potatoes. So now we got to get to sauteing this stuff, right? Okay, so I've got 2 tablespoons of butter in this pan, okay, and I'm going to add a cup of onion. Might as well turn this up to about medium high. And I've got a 1/3 cup of celery, and I've got my cubed toast, okay, and my salt and pepper. And then I'm just going to grab a spatula and I'm going to saute this until the celery and onions are tender. Now I have found that this mixture is a little dry, so I'm going to add another 2 tablespoons of butter. Now this is Pennsylvania Dutch cooking. We don't worry about butter, okay? There are no calories, there's no fat, there's no cholesterol, nothing like that in Pennsylvania Dutch country, okay? It's just butter and you use a lot of it. So, we're going to keep stirring this until it's evenly mixed, and I have everything pressed down in the pan like that so I can get everything sauteed and get the onions and celery tender now. And so I'm going to turn this down on low, and I'm going to cover it so that I don't have to keep standing here. So now it's been about 10 minutes, and I have my mashed potatoes here sitting on this ice to get the mashed potatoes cool enough to add some eggs. Okay, because if I add them right now, my eggs might just scramble in that because these potatoes are still very hot. So that's what I'm doing with that. That is a restaurant thing. There's a thing called Serve Safe. If you work in a restaurant or you're going to be a food handler, you have to take this course, and it's all about temperatures and keeping foods at safe temperatures and all that. And so that's what I'm doing with this. Also, like I said, I don't want scrambled eggs, you know, when I add the eggs. And this only takes about 15 minutes to get the potatoes. Another way to get them to cool quicker is to stir them around, and that releases the steam so they'll cool even quicker. So that's all I'm waiting on as far as putting this together. And I'm a long haul truck driver, and I love to find the buffets when I'm in Pennsylvania, the Amish buffets, the Pennsylvania Dutch buffets, and all that. I'm here to tell you it's the best food ever. And so my grandmother, my dad's mother, she cooked Pennsylvania Dutch and Amish, and of course she cooked a lot of different styles. She liked Russian, she liked German, and of course southeastern United States cuisine, because it's all kind of the same in a way. It's all a bunch of comfort food that isn't really spicy, unless you're talking about, say, Creole or Cajun down in Louisiana or whatnot. There you have your spicy foods. But here in Tennessee, you know, we cook a lot the same way as far as comfort food that's not real spicy, you know, as the Amish and Pennsylvania Dutch and Russian and German folks. And so that's one reason why I love Pennsylvania Dutch food so much, is because it's comfort food. It sticks to your ribs. It's not going to upset your stomach with all this spicy garbage that I no longer like. Now, when I was young, I loved it. I don't like it no more. Alrighty then. So our potatoes are now at room temperature, which I talked about earlier. You can ice bath them like I did. And I've got this mixture right here that I want to add to the potatoes. Then I'm going to give that a mix. Now some people would do stovetop stuffing and mashed potatoes so that they didn't have to chop celery and onions and all that. You can look up that recipe if you want to. Some people frown on that. They're like, oh, that's shortcuts, you know, and all that. So, you know, it just depends on how you feel about it, right? And so I've had the stovetop stuffing and mashed potato version of this potato filling before, and I thought it was good, okay? But I also like this version, and so I thought I would just do the homemade version for you guys, you know. And so now that this mixture is a lot cooler, I can now safely add the egg without having scrambled eggs in my potatoes. So here we go. And I'm just going to mix this together. And then I'm going to get ready to make the pierogies. Now there's two ways to make Boova Shenkel. And I have caught a little heat over this. But in a 1940s Pennsylvania Dutch cookbook, there is a recipe where the pierogies are put on top of a thick beef stew and baked in the oven on top, okay? And then there is a more typical or standard version where the pierogies are boiled and then they are topped with something like brown gravy, brown butter, some kind of gravy, and some people like them with dandelion greens and hot bacon grease and whatnot. Hot bacon dressing, I'm so sorry, please forgive me for that. And so there's, like I said, a couple of different ways to serve them. Some people boil them and then fry them in brown butter, okay? So there's different ways to have Boova Shenkel. This one is, I guess, more typical, more standard, is to have the boiled dumplings. So keep in mind, if you're going to be baking these, you're going to need a different kind of dough than if you're going to boil them, because boiling and baking are kind of two different ways to cook something, and you want to make sure you're using the dough that is structurally correct for the cooking method that you're going to use. So moving on. By the way, if you are going to make your circles and your dough and all that ahead of the game or early in the game, you're going to want to keep them covered to keep them from drying out and getting crackly. So that's just a little side note there. If you don't want to fool with all this, make your dough and make your pierogies or your circles last. That's just up to you.